Hello, Robs. We're back with the Bürgermeister's daughter, as we're entering the last 50 or so pages, and chapter 5. In 1546, Anna's brother Philip and sister Agatha appeared on the honor roll of nobility, number 13, supporting schools and needy students. Married to Wolf Schantz, a Wertheim government official in 1545, Agatha appears under his name with his coat of arms, a raven with a golden ring in its mouth, set against the white and black background, bottom right. The Buchler arms, golden spades crossed on a blue background, bottom middle. Appear under Philip's name. Above, left, and middle are Hole's arms, a gold cross on a red shield, and a hand or glove on a blue shield. Both were coiners' marks. The Heller bore a cross and a hand, symbols of the city's autonomy. The roll is in St. Michael's Church, directly across from the Buchler house. Chapter 5, Siblings. After two defeats by imperial forces in Italy, where France and Spain had fought over disputed territory since the early 1520s, the King of France, desperate for a victory, signed a commercial treaty with the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. Suleiman the Magnificent died 1566. In 1536, never mind that this same king bore the title Most Christian King, increased commercial contacts with the Ottoman Empire, promised the Franco-Ottoman military offensive in Italy that might just give the French king the advantage he so desired. That hope materialized only in his mind's eye, however. That it had been contemplated at all attests the embittered political history of Italy and the Holy Roman Empire during the 1530s and 40s. Christian did not need to join Turk against Christian. However, for one side to gain advantage over the other, and now white-hot doctrinal war between Catholics and Protestants in these same decades, the Pope accomplished that single-handedly by crushing the fledgling ecumenical movement inspired by religious reformers on both sides. Meeting in the German cities of Worms and Regensburg, the leaders had reached tentative agreement on 23 controversial doctrines. Pope Paul III, 1534 to 1549, had earlier pocketed the comparatively mild organizational reforms of his own self-appointed Blue Ribbon Reform Commission, 1537. And he was certainly not now going to countenance major doctrinal changes on the recommendation of liberal Catholic and Protestant reformers. By the mid-1540s, Catholic housecleaning was safely confined to the carefully controlled Council of Trent, 1545 to 1563, under prominent Jesuit leadership. The concurrent military contest between Catholics and Protestants within the empire reached its conclusion as well on April 24th, 1547, when imperial forces crushed the army of electoral Saxony in a victory that adversely affected all German Protestant cities and territories, including Halle. Suddenly the Elector of Saxony and the Landgrave of Hesse, the political captains of the Reformation, had become the emperor's prisoners. Carefully chosen surrogates took their places with a mandate to maintain Catholic religious practice until a new church council could resolve the doctrinal disputes once and for all. The only Protestant traces to be tolerated were clerical marriage and lay communion with cup and bread. The Emperor's Interim, as the new arrangement was called, only repelled both sides, however, and gave the conservative forces on each a greater following and authority than before. Discovering that the Reformation was too deeply rooted in Saxony and Hesse to be supplanted by the old faith, even the Emperor's puppets soon turned against him. By 1552, the interim was effectively over, and the road to the permanent division of Western Christendom, politically and religiously, stood clear and inviting, as each land was soon to possess the legal right to determine its own religion. Betrayal and permanent separation also characterized these decades for the Buchler family. By his last will and testament, Hermann Buchler disinherited Anna as completely as he could, thereby transferring the conflict she had pursued with him until his death in 1543 to one she would now have to endure with her siblings until her own death in 1552. The last years of the old Bürgermeister's life had been among his best, and the winter of 1541 was surely one of its peaks. On February 11th of that year, Emperor Charles V had visited Hull en route to Crailsheim and had been a guest in the Buchler home on Market Square. As the emperor approached the city, an official delegation rode out to meet him. In it were Burgomaster Conrad Buchler, city secretary Maternus Wurzelmann, and wine merchant Christoph Haas, closely followed by 40 horsemen. The welcoming committee wore black, as did the emperor, who was then mourning the recent death of his wife. Behind the welcoming committee rode other important civic leaders, each adorned with brightly colored plumes. Among them was Anna's brother Philip. The welcoming party escorted the emperor to the Gelbinger Gate, riding directly in front of him, and was followed by a rival Uenloa. I did look that one up. Uenloa, I believe it is, or it could be Uenloa delegation, which had escorted him through their land. At the gate, the emperor received the keys to the city before proceeding to City Square. He was very simply dressed in a plain black coat and hat and wore no silk or gold. When he dismounted at the Buchler house, the city presented him with baskets of pike and carp, 2 wagon loads of oats, and 1 of wine. In addition, the council gave him a goblet filled with gold pieces. Thereafter he entered the house of Hermann Buchler and dined. The lower floors of the Buchler's house had originally been the official residence of the imperial mayor, Reichsschloss, the emperor's representative and watchdog in Hull since before 1212, the first recorded date of the imperial mayor's presence in the city. Attached to it was a modest and carefully maintained royal court, which the emperor and his party had occupied in centuries past during their infrequent visits to the city. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the building became the domicile of Hull's Bürgermeisters. In the 16th century, Hermann Buchler acquired it as his private home, although it would later serve as a residence of Hull's Bürgermeisters before being transformed into the city's Ratskeller. Today, the modern Hotel Adelshof stands on the spot and embraces within its bowels the old Buchler house. A figure of the emperor commemorating his visit to the city in 1541 and 1546 still decorates the main entrance. For the evening meal, Hermann Buchler served the following bill of fare: a gourmet's delight, which can still be ordered by parties of 4 or more at the Hotel Adelshof. Puree of smoked trout with a light caper sauce and caviar, delicately arranged on a bed of colored lettuce leaves. Puree of green pea soup with sour cream, bacon, and coarse-grained rolls. Pancakes filled with mushrooms, minced egg, and vegetables fried in lard. Bits and pieces of Schwabish Hall pork in a bacon blanket on grape sauce with steamed turnips and baked semolina dumplings. Tepid rice paste boiled in almond extract with glaseed pears, sugared cinnamon, and wafer cake. Honey mead. The following day, the emperor rode east to Crailsheim. Before his death in 1558, he returned to Hull one more time on December 16, 1546, and remained in the region for a week. He did not come this time, however, as the city's friend, nor was he there to be festively entertained. He arrived with 20,000 men and the Duke of Alva, 1507 to 1582. The commander of the imperial forces then engaging the Lutheran Schmalkaldic League in southwestern Germany and soon to become the Habsburg scourge of the Netherlands Calvinists. The emperor had come as an avenger to punish the citizens of Hull for its participation in the small Chaldaic League, and perhaps to his great delight to see its Protestant reformer, Johannes Brands, burned. Again he spent the night in the Bushler house, now hosted by Anna's brother Philip, then its new owner. He departed on the following day after demanding payment of 60,000 gulden for the city for its betrayal of the empire by joining the Protestant alliance. Disinherited. In a life as traumatic as Anna's, it might be expected that both her father and husband would die within a month of each other. Hermann Buschler in July, Hans von Lusenbrunn in August 1543. The unfortunate Lusenbrunn spent the last weeks of his life in Hull's hospice, where he was admitted as a poor man, as indication of his and Anna's impoverishment. Located between Froschgraben and Spittelbach streets, a block from the river, the city hospice was a community in its own right, and a true social institution dating back to the 13th century. It provided charity and medical care for any and all in need, whether rich or poor, nobleman or commoner. Having grown rich over the centuries from generous endowments, it had, by the 16th century, evolved from a mere depository for the sick and dying into a caring hospital and sprawling home for the aged, the orphaned, and the poor. Numerous personnel staffed its many services, which included a bakery, a butchery, and a school. As fate would have it, Anna would soon follow her late husband there, entering as a poor person in the even fuller sense of the term, not only as one who was ill and impoverished, but as a prisoner of the city as well. In removing his hostile presence from her life and reopening the discussion of her inheritance, the death of Hermann Buschler might have been a boon to Anna's fortunes. Hermann Buschler had a knack for saving the worst for last, however, and once again he would excel his previous acts of ill will toward his daughter. Although at the time he could only imagine the consequences of his action, by his last will and testament he managed to cast an even darker shadow over her in death than he had done in life. He virtually disinherited her, leaving her only the absolute minimum he believed the law required. By doing so, he tempted her to litigate as furiously with her siblings for a share of the family estate as she had twice been forced to do with him. She had, however, one powerful factor on her side. Absolute disinheritance of a child was repugnant to German law, regardless of the circumstances. Originally, the law had recognized only communal succession to collective property. The entire clan inherited ancestral land. The law did not permit the deceased to alter the claim of his many kin by a personal testament singling out only a few favored individuals. By contrast, Roman law based the order of inheritance on the free will of the deceased and only secondarily on a communal right of intestate succession to the family estate by all kin. This allowed for greater individualism and favoritism in the disposition of family wealth, and made possible a strategy of inheritance. Over time, German law also came to recognize a freely chosen testamentary order of succession, while still maintaining a moral bias toward the rights of the larger family, as a compromise between the principle of a testator's freedom on the one hand and the interest and well-being of all members of his family on the other. German law borrowed from Roman law the notion of a compulsory portion. The statutory right of all kin to inherit was thereby restricted, while the right of the children, the surviving spouse, and even the grandparents to a fair share of the estate was guaranteed. It was this deep-seated principle of equitable inheritance or fair portion, particularly in regard to members of the immediate and nuclear family, that gave Anna a fighting chance to gain more of the family inheritance than her father had decreed. In German law, when children were passed over or insufficiently remembered in a father's will, they retained a powerful moral claim to the value of what they had lost. The disinherited or deprived child was viewed as a kind of creditor of the heirs, who now shared his or her lost or diminished portion. According to priest Arnold Engel, Anna's brother Philip and sister Agatha had at first not wanted their sister to receive any more inheritance than their father's testament allowed. They quickly recognized, however, the protracted litigation would be the price of enforcing their father's testament. So as their father before them had done in the matter of the maternal inheritance, her siblings too now offered Anna a deal, believing that they could make peace with her at small sacrifice to themselves. After much frank discussion among themselves and with their respective advisers and city officials, the three children agreed on October 16th, 1543, to award Anna a somewhat more generous portion of the family estate. The preamble to the agreement frankly acknowledged their father's preemptive bestowal of testamentary property on Philip in advance of his death. At least one witness alleged that several thousand gulden had been given illegally to Philip. In his testament, Hermann Buchler appropriately compensated Agatha for such favoritism to her brother, while ignoring Anna. Had the terms of the testament been strictly followed, the three children would have ended up sharing most unevenly in their father's estate, which various witnesses put at between 15,000 and 20,000 gulden, and the whole tax list set at 16,000 in the year of his death, 1543. According to Anna's most sympathetic witness, student David Schmidlin, had Anna received an equal share of the estate at her father's death, she would no longer have felt disadvantaged by the cruel events of her life, and the long Buchler family feud would have ended then and there. The preamble to the October 1543 agreement describes the portion allotted to Anna by her father as rather too harsh and unkind, particularly now that she was a widow. That frank acknowledgment on the part of all concerned, including members of the city council who signed off on the agreement, was an unusual civic admission. Hermann Buchler's neighbors and colleagues did not believe him to be as heroic a parent as he was a Bürgermeister. Not only did the small portion he left to Anna fall well short of what was required to pay the Lusenbrun's remarkable debts, it did not even establish a floor for a life of minimal comfort during Anna's remaining years, which the signatories, with Anna's likely exception, expected to be few. In alleged recognition of her age, mid-40s, and failing health, the result of many adverse circumstances, and surely also in the hope of deflecting any further legal action she might be contemplating, her siblings proposed a fairer distribution of the family estate, calling for their quarreling to end. The agreement gave Anna lifelong use of a house her father owned on Gelbinger Street, outside the old city wall, but still within a short walking distance from the family house on Market Square. Her siblings also committed themselves to pay up to 1,200 gulden of her indebtedness, which may have been generous, for according to one witness, Anna's incredible and recognized debt stood only at around 1,000 gulden. Anna also received 3 beds, 3 cushions, 4 pillows, 1 pair of bed linens, 4 tablecloths, 6 hand towels, 3 trunks, 2 tables, 1 rim with metal, 50 pieces of pewter, some kitchen tools, 3 silver cups, 1 of 12 pennyweight, and a partridge, Sorry, bruv. And an altar distaff, presumably within a spinning wheel, or if she preferred 10 gulden in its place. The siblings further pledged to provide her every fall with 3 1/4 bushels of corn, 10 of wheat, and 2 of oats, along with a carload of cooking wine and half a cartload of nakar, drinking wine, none of which, however, she might sell for cash if unused. Save for her clothes, which she remained free to dispose of as she chose, everything given to her was to be returned upon her death to her nearest relatives, who, if she remained unmarried and childless, as then seemed likely, would be her siblings. Finally, Anna was to receive an 80 gulden annuity for the rest of her life, payable in standard currency at the rate of 20 gulden per quarter. Viewed against a possible 16,000 gulden estate, this was hardly an equal share, but it did exceed what her father's testament would have given her. By that document, Anna was to receive only a third of the legal third of the family estate in formal inheritance legitimata, the remaining 2/3 of the third to be divided more or less equally between Philip and Agatha, who would then also share the remaining greater part of the family estate as well. To make matters possibly worse for Anna, her father's testament also designated a lost son, Bonaventure, a cloth merchant who had been absent from Hall for over 2 years without any communication and was presumed dead, an equal heir to the official third, should he by some miracle return alive. In addition, Bonaventure was also to share the 1,200 gulden bond with Philip. Only in the very unlikely event that the three favored children, Philip, Agatha, and Bonaventure, died without surviving offspring, was Anna to inherit anything beyond her third of a third. In real terms, Philip was far away the winner and Anna the loser by their father's arrangement. In an estate of 16,000 gulden, an estimated 3,400 had already been bequeathed to Philip. Only one-third of the remaining 12,600 gulden, 4,200 gulden, was to be shared equally by the three, and possibly four, children, the legal third. Ideally, in 1543, that would have meant 1,400 gulden for Anna. But the testament also called for fair compensation to be paid to the other siblings for the properties earlier awarded to Philip. That was to be done by reckoning a fair cash equivalent of the value of those properties to the third, which all the children would then share equally, the infusion of new money apparently to come from Herman Buchler's estate, and possibly also from Philip's lion-sized share of it. Such payments would still have been a bargain for Philip, inasmuch as his father had estimated the worth of the properties given him to be no more than their original purchase price. He would thus have gotten them for perhaps as little as half of their true market value in 1543. In other words, his father had made it possible for him to buy out his siblings at a very deep discount, and Philip also shared in the third he fattened. On such terms, he would have been eager to add to the communal pie. Calculating fair compensation, then, to be at least 3,400 gulden, the sum of Philip's two properties, estimated at 2,200 gulden, plus his 1,200 gulden bond, Anna's share of the compensatory payment would have added another 1,134 gulden to her basal 1,400, assuming Bonaventure never returned. Something tells me Bonaventure's coming back on the last day, so ideally a 2,534 gulden award may have been possible. These figures, however, do not take into account any outstanding taxes or other obligations on her father's estate, so the actual figures were certainly lower. On the other hand, the deal offered her by her siblings in 1543 gave her a sure 1,200 gulden in immediate debt abatement, together with a house and furnishings, annual allotments of staples, and an equally golden lifetime annuity, the total value of which, according to her brother, amounted to 3 times what her father had left her and more than half of the third the three were to share. So while far from an equal portion of the family estate, the settlement Philip and Agatha offered their sister could have provided a good livelihood for a frugal and disciplined woman. The two had every reason to be pleased with the agreement. 2 years later, in 1545, the whole tax list put Agatha and husband Wolfschan's taxable wealth at 6,400 gulden, and Philip's at 7,837, while Anna appeared on the same list as a citizen without property, and hence no tax obligation. 4 years later, Anna still held that lowly status on the tax list of 1549. And that will be all for today, Brobs. Goodbye!